I knew Sarah was cheating the moment I saw her reflection in the hotel lobby mirror. She didn't notice me. She was too engrossed in Derek's lips against her neck, his hands possessively clutching her waist as they waited for the elevator. My wife of 8 years and my business partner of 5, hidden in plain sight, thinking they were safe in a hotel 15 miles from our office. I stood frozen, briefcase in hand, the contracts I'd stayed up all night preparing suddenly meaningless. I'd come to surprise Derek with our completed bid for the Morrison account, the biggest opportunity our firm had ever seen. Instead, I received the most devastating surprise of my life. The elevator doors opened, and they stepped inside, laughing. As the doors closed, Sarah reached up and kissed him deeply, with a passion I hadn't seen from her in years. I didn't confront them. I didn't make a scene. I simply turned around and walked out, the image of their betrayal seared into my mind like a brand. That was 6 months ago. Today, I'm finally ready to collect what I'm owed. Sarah and I met in graduate school, both of us ambitious and driven. I was immediately captivated by her quick mind and infectious laugh. She was studying marketing while I focused on business development. We complemented each other perfectly. She understood people, and I understood systems. After graduation, we married and built our life together. When I decided to start my own consulting firm, Sarah was my biggest supporter. She stayed up late with me planning the business model, critiquing my proposals, even designing our first logo. We were a team in every sense of the word. 3 years in, when we needed to expand, Sarah suggested bringing in Derek Mitchell. He had a reputation for being brilliant at client acquisition, and we needed someone with his charisma and connections. I trusted Sarah's judgment implicitly. Derek became not just my business partner, but one of my closest friends, or so I thought. The first few years were magical. Our business, MSB Consulting, grew rapidly. Derek brought in high-profile clients while I handled strategy and operations. Sarah managed our marketing and brand presence. We were the perfect trio, our combined talents creating something greater than any of us could have built alone. Looking back, I can see the warning signs. The way Derek's eyes lingered on Sarah during meetings. How she began dressing differently when she knew he would be at the office. The inside jokes they shared that somehow always excluded me. But I was too consumed with growing our business to notice the growing distance between Sarah and me. "You're working too much, Michael," she would say, her tone more accusatory than concerned. "Maybe you should take a page from Derek's book. He knows how to balance work and play." I'd brush off her comments, assuming she was just frustrated with my long hours. I was working for us, for our future. I never imagined she was building a different future altogether. The small betrayals accumulated slowly. Sarah began critiquing me constantly. My clothes, my conversational skills, my business decisions. Nothing I did seemed good enough anymore. Meanwhile, Derek could do no wrong in her eyes. "Derek thinks we should pursue the international market," she'd say over dinner, not bothering to look up from her phone. "I've explained why that's premature," I'd respond, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. "We need to solidify our domestic base first." "Well, Derek says that's playing it safe. He says visionaries take risks." It was always Derek says, or Derek thinks. My opinion, despite having built this company from nothing, suddenly carried less weight than his. Then came the unexplained absences, late meetings that couldn't be rescheduled, weekend conferences I wasn't invited to attend, the growing coldness in our bed. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that all marriages go through periods of distance. But the day I saw them at the hotel confirmed what my subconscious had been screaming for months. My wife and my business partner had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. That night, I sat alone in my home office, a glass of whiskey in my hand, and made a decision. I wouldn't confront them. Not yet. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Instead, I would be patient. I would plan. I would make them pay for their betrayal in ways they couldn't imagine. The next morning, I acted as if nothing had changed. I greeted Sarah with a kiss on the cheek, listened to her talk about her plans for the day, and headed to the office where I shook Derek's hand and discussed client strategies. But behind my facade of normalcy, I began gathering information. I installed monitoring software on our home computer and Sarah's work laptop. I recorded their phone conversations. I hired a private investigator to document their meetings. What I discovered was far worse than I had imagined. Not only were they having an affair, but they were actively plotting to push me out of my own company. Derek had been cultivating relationships with our board members, suggesting that my conservative approach was holding the company back. Sarah had been working behind the scenes, preparing marketing materials for a rebranded company, one that conspicuously omitted my name. The most damning evidence came in the form of emails discussing their post-Michael strategy. They had already consulted with a lawyer about forcing a buyout at a fraction of my shares' worth. They planned to use my long hours and emotional distance as grounds for divorce, with Sarah claiming she deserved half the company for her contributions. Their arrogance was breathtaking. They assumed I was too absorbed in my work to notice their machinations. They underestimated me, and that would be their downfall. My breaking point came during a dinner at our home. Sarah had invited Derek over to discuss business, something that had become increasingly common. I watched from across the table as they exchanged knowing glances, their fingers brushing when passing dishes, the subtle intimacy of betrayal happening right in front of me. "You seem distracted, Michael," Sarah said, her tone condescending. "Derek and I were discussing the Westfield proposal. He thinks we should take a more aggressive approach." Derek nodded, wearing the expression of benevolent concern he had perfected. "No offense, Michael, but your caution might cost us this account. Sometimes you need to take risks to get ahead." "Like sleeping with your business partner's wife?" The words almost escaped my lips, but I held back. Not yet. The time wasn't right. Instead, I smiled tightly. "I appreciate your input, Derek. I'll consider it." Later that night, as Sarah slept beside me, or pretended to, I realized with crystal clarity that this couldn't continue. I would not be the passive victim of their betrayal. I would not allow them to steal what I had built through years of sacrifice and hard work. I would act, but not with the hot rage they might expect. No, my revenge would be cold, calculated, and complete. My plan required patience above all else. I needed to appear oblivious while positioning my pieces on the board. The first step was to secure my company. I began having private meetings with our major clients, strengthening my personal relationships with them. I emphasized how my direct involvement had benefited their businesses, subtly separating my contributions from Derek's flashier but less substantial work. With our board members, I took a different approach. I shared my vision for the company's future, a vision that highlighted innovation while emphasizing financial stability. I made myself indispensable by spearheading a new service line that quickly became our most profitable division. Simultaneously, I created a paper trail documenting Derek's increasingly erratic business decisions. I didn't need to fabricate anything. His arrogance had led to several questionable calls that I had previously covered for. Now, I simply stopped hiding his mistakes. On the home front, I played the role of the oblivious, devoted husband. I sent Sarah flowers, planned date nights, and told her how much I appreciated her, all while documenting her lies, her absences, and her increasingly brazen disrespect. "You're being unusually romantic," she commented one evening, looking almost guilty as she received the expensive bracelet I'd bought her, the purchase recorded and added to my evidence file. "I just realized I've been taking you for granted," I replied, watching her discomfort grow. "I want to make sure you know how much you mean to me." The irony was exquisite. Every act of affection was another twist of the knife I was preparing to plunge. The most delicate part of my plan involved the company's finances. Derek had been skimming from certain accounts, likely to fund the lavish lifestyle he used to impress Sarah. I had discovered his embezzlement months ago, but had said nothing. Now I carefully documented every instance, creating an airtight case that would be impossible to defend against. I also discovered that Derek had been cutting corners on our regulatory compliance, particularly with the Morrison account, our biggest client. He'd falsified certain certifications to expedite the process, putting the entire company at risk. Rather than correcting his mistakes, I documented them, knowing they would be valuable ammunition. As for Sarah, I made sure to document her role in all of this. Her knowledge of Derek's financial improprieties, her complicity in his schemes, and most damning of all, her use of company resources to plan their future together at my expense. By the time 3 months had passed, I had assembled a comprehensive dossier of their betrayal, personal and professional. But I still wasn't ready to strike. Timing would be everything. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Derek, growing increasingly confident in his position, proposed a company restructuring that would effectively dilute my authority while expanding his role. He presented it during a board meeting, with Sarah enthusiastically supporting his proposal. "This restructuring will position us for the growth we've been discussing," he said smoothly, glancing at Sarah with barely concealed intimacy. "Michael's strengths are in operations, but we need visionary leadership to take us to the next level." Several board members nodded, clearly having been primed for this moment. I could see the trap closing around me. If I opposed the restructuring, I would appear resistant to growth. If I accepted it, I would be surrendering control of my own company. I smiled, appearing thoughtful. "You've clearly put a lot of work into this proposal, Derek. I'd like to review it in detail before we make any decisions. Perhaps we could reconvene next week?" Derek couldn't hide his disappointment at the delay, but he had no reasonable grounds to object. "Of course. Take your time." That week became the most intense of my professional life. I worked day and night, calling in favors, finalizing evidence, and preparing for what would come next. The night before the follow-up board meeting, Sarah tried to extract information from me. "Have you finished reviewing Derek's proposal?" she asked, attempting to sound casual as she slipped into bed beside me. "I have," I replied simply. "And?" Her voice held an edge of anxiety. I turned to her, my face neutral. "And I think tomorrow will be very interesting." She studied me for a moment, perhaps sensing something in my tone. For the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. Good. The boardroom was tense the next morning. Derek sat confidently at the table, Sarah beside him, not even trying to hide their alliance anymore. The board members filed in, along with our company lawyer, whom I had specifically requested to attend. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady. "Before we discuss Derek's restructuring proposal, there are some matters I need to bring to the board's attention." Derek's smile faltered slightly. "Perhaps we should stick to the agenda, Michael. We're here to discuss the restructuring." "This is relevant to any restructuring decisions," I replied evenly, then turned to our lawyer. "Could you please distribute the documents?" The lawyer handed each board member a sealed folder. I watched their faces as they opened the files and began reading. Shock, disbelief, disgust. "What is this?" Derek demanded, his face flushing as he scanned the contents of his folder. "Evidence," I said simply. "Evidence of financial impropriety, regulatory violations, and breach of fiduciary duty." "This is absurd!" Derek slammed his hand on the table. "This is a character assassination attempt because you're threatened by my proposal." I remained calm. "The evidence speaks for itself. Bank records showing unauthorized transfers from client accounts. Falsified compliance documents for the Morrison project. Emails discussing how to systematically undermine my position in the company I founded." The board members looked at Derek with growing horror. His charisma couldn't erase the black and white evidence in front of them. "And Sarah?" I continued, turning to my wife, whose face had drained of all color. Would you like to explain to the board how company resources were used to facilitate your affair with Derek? Or perhaps you'd prefer to explain your role in the plan to force me out of my own company? Michael, She couldn't finish, the weight of exposure crushing her practiced composure. I turned back to the board. I've also taken the liberty of speaking with our major clients. They've all indicated that their relationships are with me personally, not with the company as an entity. If Derek's restructuring goes forward, they will take their business elsewhere. The room was silent. Derek's restructuring proposal lay forgotten on the table, his grand plan in ruins. Given these circumstances, I continued, I propose an alternative restructuring. Derek will resign from the company, effective immediately, with no severance and no references. The board will appoint an independent investigator to determine if criminal charges are warranted regarding the financial discrepancies. I paused, looking directly at Sarah. As for our marketing director, I'll be handling that personnel decision privately. The vote was unanimous. Derek was out, stripped of his position, his reputation, and his future in our industry. As security escorted him from the building, the look of disbelief on his face was the first installment of my revenge. Sarah tried to approach me after the meeting, tears streaming down her face. Michael, please, let me explain. Save it for your lawyer, I interrupted coldly. You'll be hearing from mine. The personal reckoning came later that evening. I arrived home to find Sarah waiting, her eyes red from crying, desperation written across her face. Michael, we need to talk, she began, her voice breaking. What happened today? I know how it looks, but it's not. Not what? I interrupted, my voice eerily calm. Not an affair with my business partner? Not a conspiracy to steal my company? Not a complete betrayal of our marriage and the trust I placed in you? I made a mistake, she whispered. We can work through this. I laughed, the sound devoid of humor. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, Sarah. What you did was a calculated betrayal that went on for months. You didn't just cheat on me. You tried to destroy me. That's not true. Derek was the one who— Stop. My voice cut through her excuses like a blade. I have the emails, Sarah. I have the recordings. I know exactly what you said about me, what you planned, how you laughed at my obliviousness while plotting to take everything I've built. Her face crumpled as she realized the extent of my knowledge. How long have you known? Long enough to ensure that you and Derek will never recover from this. I walked to my office and returned with a thick folder, which I dropped on the coffee table between us. Divorce papers, I explained as she stared at the document. You'll note there's no proposed settlement included. That's because you'll be getting nothing. You can't do that, she protested, panic rising in her voice. I'm entitled to half of everything. The house, the savings, my share of the company. Your prenuptial agreement waives your rights in cases of infidelity, I reminded her. And as for your share of the company, the board has unanimously agreed to terminate your employment for ethical violations. Your company shares will be returned to the company treasury as stipulated in the shareholder agreement you signed. Her face paled as the reality of her situation began to sink in. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice small. That's not my concern anymore, I replied. You have until tomorrow to pack your personal belongings. Anything you leave behind will be donated or disposed of. Tomorrow? That's impossible. I need time to— You had time, Sarah. You had 8 years of my time, my trust, and my love. You wasted it. Now your time is up. I turned to leave the room, but her desperate voice stopped me. I loved you once, Michael. I really did. I looked back at her, this woman I had once built my life around, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction at her distress. The feeling was mutual, I replied. But unlike you, when I commit to something, I see it through, including this divorce. The aftermath unfolded exactly as I had planned. Derek, facing potential criminal charges for embezzlement, fled the country, abandoning Sarah to face the consequences alone. His hasty departure only confirmed his guilt in everyone's eyes. Sarah tried to fight the divorce terms, but her case collapsed when her lawyer heard the recordings I had gathered. She left with nothing but her personal belongings and the crushing weight of her actions. The company not only survived, but thrived without them. I promoted Claire, my loyal assistant, who had secretly helped gather evidence against Derek, to Chief Operations Officer. Together, we restructured the firm, focusing on ethical business practices and client relationships built on trust. As for Sarah, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had been forced to move to a small apartment in a less desirable neighborhood, taking a low-level marketing job at a struggling company, the only place that would hire her after word of her professional and personal betrayals spread through our industry. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I received an email from her. "Michael, I understand now what I threw away. The life we built, the trust you placed in me, I destroyed it all for something that wasn't real. Derek abandoned me the moment things got difficult. He never loved me the way you did. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I recognize the magnitude of my mistake, and I'll be paying for it for the rest of my life. Sarah." I read the email once, then deleted it without replying. Her regrets meant nothing to me now. 1 year later, I stood in my expanded office, looking out over the city skyline. The company had doubled in size, with Claire proving to be a better partner than Derek ever was. Honest, dedicated, and loyal. My phone buzzed with a message from my real estate agent confirming the sale of our former home, the last tangible reminder of my life with Sarah. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders as I typed my approval. Later that evening, Claire and I celebrated the company's most successful quarter with a quiet dinner. As we clinked glasses, she studied my face. "You seem different lately," she observed. "More at peace." I considered her words. I am. For a long time, I was consumed by what Sarah and Derek did, the betrayal, the revenge, all of it. But now, I realized that the best revenge wasn't exposing them or taking everything back. "No?" Claire raised an eyebrow. "Number. The best revenge is moving forward and building something better than what was destroyed. They're trapped in the consequences of their actions, while I'm free to create a new future." As we continued our dinner, discussing plans for the company's expansion, I realized I had achieved something that Sarah and Derek never could: success built on integrity, partnerships founded on trust, and a life defined by my own terms, not by the betrayals of others. The game they started, I had finished. And I had won not just by destroying their plans, but by refusing to let their betrayal define me. In the end, that was the most satisfying victory of all. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.